Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, January 22nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game is in 222 days. The game against Michigan in 313 days. On yesterday's show, we brought in our buddy Ross Fulton, one of the X's and O's gurus at BuckeyeHuddle.com, to talk about Bill O'Brien and some changes that could be coming to the Ohio State offense, how that new addition to the staff could change things for the Buckeyes in terms of stuff during the week, stuff during the game, schematically, all that kind of stuff. Now we're going to focus on the other side of the ball, another big addition that happened at Ohio State over the weekend or on Friday anyway, and that is the addition of Caleb Downs through the transfer portal, freshman All-American safety from Alabama, now a sophomore potential All-American safety at Ohio State. One of the biggest transfer portal additions outside of Justin Fields, maybe in the Ohio State transfer portal history. We're going to bring Ross back now to talk about that and the impact on the defense. And as always, when we talk to Ross, we are proudly sponsored by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, who proudly offers nationally acclaimed U.S.D.A. prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the incredible menu and make a reservation today. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Caleb Downs. Obviously, he was a safety at Alabama. He is going to be a safety at Ohio State, but Ohio State has really three safety positions if you count that nickel spot. So, Ross, where does Caleb Downs fit in the Jim Knowles defense? Where is he going to end up playing?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously to your lead in there in terms of like comparing to Justin Fields. I mean, he's not a quarterback, but I mean, Caleb Downs is a great football player. Like he was great as a true freshman. It was really impressive. He's got to be probably one of the better players in college football the last few years. So for his position, so Caleb Downs could pretty much do whatever Jim Knowles wanted him to do. I'm sure though that he will play the quote unquote adjuster or field safeties position where Josh Proctor played this year. That puts Latham Ransom at bandit or boundary safety, which is where he's been. Fits his skill set in terms of coming downhill. You have Jordan Hancock as your nickel. And so, you get a full-time, like perfect fit. There you go. Borrow from Bear. Yeah, got it, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. You get basically like a perfect fit, right, for that spot. And it allows you to do so much. Like, yes, he could be your deep middle of the field safety if you want him to. I mean, he has spent the past year in Nick Saban's, system. So lots of cover four, pattern matching, single high. It makes it very easy for Ohio State to adjust to motion because there's a lot of versatility there between he and Latham Ransom in terms of like if, you switch sides, Ransom becomes a deep safety, Caleb Downs comes down. And so it fits both really well within Caleb Downs can play any kind of coverage scheme, but I think it fits well with one of the few areas where there was a question mark personnel-wise next year in terms of who would be that field safety.
The other guy who was sort of in the mix to potentially be that field safety this year, Malik Hartford, of course, will obviously still be there for the spring, and we'll see how this impacts his future at Ohio State. But he played as a freshman, a true freshman as well, which is very impressive to be able to be in that spot even as much as he was. And then Caleb Downs played even more as a true freshman. So a couple good options there for Ohio State. And with the playoff coming and potentially playing as many as 16 games, if you're going through and you're playing the Big Ten championship game and you win the Big Ten championship game and you go to the college football playoff and you get all the way to the national championship. I mean, that's just a lot of football. So having multiple options there is not a bad thing. It also allows them, with the return of Latham Ransom, which I think is a really underrated piece in terms of the safety puzzle for this year, but also you add Caleb Downs. That means maybe Ohio State has also added a 5-star linebacker by the name of Sonny Styles to its roster, because Sonny Styles played safety a lot last year, but he may now if you're comfortable with your safeties, that may allow him to play a little closer to the line of scrimmage, which may fit not just his body type, but his game may be better as well.
Yeah. So, okay, when they lost Latham Ransom, as we talked about, like that had a big impact on the defense, particularly in the amount that they were willing to play man coverage or, use single high schemes. They were a little bit more protective of Sunny Styles because, people like to say, like, yes, I agree with the premise. Like, I think it's pretty obvious by bringing in Caleb Downs that they want Sunny Styles to play linebacker. Like, we do have to remember that prior to Ransom's injury, Sunny Styles was in fact playing linebacker, right? Like, yes, he was at the quote unquote nickel spot, but how they were using him versus heavier personnel is basically as a Sam linebacker, right? Now, that being said, I don't think it's the best use of their personnel to have him and Jordan Hancock split reps depending on 12 or 11 personnel. Like, to me, Jordan Hancock's one of their best football players and was really good as a nickel, both not just in coverage, but he's really physical and was really good in run support. And so I don't think that they should go back to that timeshare. I mean, I think Sonny Styles should move to will linebacker, which I'm sure is what they have in mind. Obviously, that's the probably now with Caleb Downs at free safety. It's the one place on the defense where there's even like a question mark or open competition. But I just generally believe in them getting smaller on defense, or in the sense of like moving guys from corner to safety, safety to linebacker, etc. So I think this fits with it. But like, they have such good DBs now. To your part about Hartford, I mean, this applies to Jermaine Matthews too. That they have a couple of sophomores who I think are going to be players and flash some as true freshmen who are sort of going to have to wait their time. But I mean, I think one way to deal with that, you mentioned the number of games. I also think they should use, be pretty liberal in using a dime packages to get those guys on the field. Because I mean, especially we've talked a lot about wanting to diversify the scheme, but the reality is with the guys they have now, I mean, they could run cover one a big chunk of the time and be really good at it because just you have 4 really good corners, you have 2 really good safeties, and then if you're playing Sonny Styles, a little linebacker, you have someone with some safety skills at the second level who can do a lot of things. And so that does, have some similarities with like what the Cleveland Browns have done this year in terms of the personnel. But yeah, but I think, I mean, in terms of Styles, I think the writing's on the wall that he's going to play linebacker.
Talking about him being a will linebacker with some safety skills, it kind of takes me back to the Pete Werner days where they used Pete Werner in that kind of role a little bit, and it allowed them to be a little more creative. And it was sometimes like, why is Pete Werner the deep safety on this play? And it didn't happen a lot, but you could kind of get away with it sometimes. We were asked on the Friday live show, right as the Caleb Downs news broke, does this mean Ohio State's going to play more single high, go back to the Kerry Combs type defense? And I said, you know what? I'm just going to have Ross on the morning show, and I'll ask Ross. My thought at as we were answering it, I sort of said I'm expecting this is going to allow them to be a little more diverse in what they do, and you can kind of pick and choose whatever you want to do. Is that what you're expecting, to diversify the scheme, or does this? I mean, like you said, you maybe can get away with just kind of playing the cover one. What are you expecting the impact of this to be?
I mean, I guess the irony you say is both could be true, right? Like, you have a veteran, very talented defensive backfield that could do a lot of things, have done a lot of things. I actually do think that they will probably play more single high, certainly than they were at the end of last year. Because again, like, you want to take advantage of your talent, and like, you have guys that can man people up, and like, for as much as we've sort of seen the downsides in like any other scheme, if you do something too much, right, offenses can exploit it. But like, it is in fact true that like, if you can man people up and play single high and bring an extra body in the box, you can be. It's pretty tough as against opposing offenses. Like, again, I use the Cleveland Browns as an example from this past year, where they had 3 really good corners. They had Styles like linebacker, and could bring him on the edge, and then you could play 4 down and bring a lot of pressure up front. So I do think that they will probably, if I had to guess, I bet they play a majority of cover one. But that said, like the Cleveland Browns, like, eventually you get exploited if you do that too often. So this does give them the ability to change it up. And like, we've seen, Knowles increasingly change it up. So I mean, I do expect some cover 2. Hopefully, if they're going to continue to use cover 4 concepts, they get a little bit more aggressive with them and a little bit more diversified, and just that soft cover 4 that we saw against Michigan. But they were a really good defense this year and now they've both bringing everyone back and have added an All-American at safety. So, I really don't think it's hyperbole to say it could be one of the best defenses Ohio State's ever had.
Well, whenever we talk about, the best defenses Ohio State's ever had, everyone wants to know, okay, so what defense is this going to be like? Because you've seen some great Ohio State 2002 Ohio State defense was a great Ohio State defense. That was very different than the 2016 Ohio State defense or the 2019 Ohio State defense. So, 2019, they don't necessarily have a Chase Young this season, but, is there an Ohio State defense from the past that you kind of think, in terms of maybe results or just sort of personnel and what they're going to try to do, that this maybe reminds you the most of?
Yeah, I think it could be kind of like those Jim Heacock defenses, more like in the later Tressel years, but just with the sort of the use of the 4-2-5, nickel. Jordan Hancock is we can call him a corner, but he plays as well as like a nickel as like any of those, Terrell Hines, Tyler Moeller guys did. But again, it's even hard because I agree they don't have a Chase Young, but like, I don't know. I'm expecting a lot out of JT and Jack Sawyer next year. It's, I think they've continued to improve. Sawyer especially is on an upward trajectory. I think it's going to be pretty tough for opponents, especially when there's coverage is pretty much taken care of. But in terms of defensive back talent, it's hard to even think of a comparison because you're talking about 5 guys that are, I guess you'd say probably Latham Ranson's probably more like a day 2, day 3 guy. But I think by the end of next year, like the rest of them are going to you're looking at first or second round picks. So it's a pretty impressive group. So again, I do think it allows them to do a lot. Obviously, hopefully they continue to, even while basing in cover one, expand the package, and use some of the pressures and the sim pressures and take advantage of styles as a linebacker, particularly like at third down. I still think he's probably seemed the most comfortable this year as a blitzer, or most impactful, I should say. And so, I do think, I guess if you're going to pick an area where the defense is sort of a question mark, it is linebacker a bit. I thought Cody Simon played very well this year and played well as the Mike in the Cotton Bowl. So, I don't think there's a concern there, but I do think, obviously if you're moving Sonny Styles, that raises a few question marks. And then, I think we'll see whether you use someone like a CJ Hicks as the often discussed, never seen Jack role, and whether, again, I think it gets into do you want to do that? Because with Jack and JT and Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, you could very easily sit in 4 down and you have 4 really good defensive ends that you could play that plenty. But do you want to mix it up and use the Jack and then bump JT inside? So there are a lot of possibilities there that, depending on I think they can be really good doing either, but I do think with more games, it behooves them to mix those kind of things in.
All right. Well, there's a little bit of stuff for Ohio State football fans to be excited about these days. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just go ahead and rewind this about a minute and a half and listen to the last minute and a half until you figure out what I'm talking about. But boy, it could be a pretty interesting Ohio State football season this year. They are getting ready to start winter workouts, and of course, we'll be covering all the spring ball that usually starts early March. Spring game will be probably mid-April, one of those Saturdays in mid-April. I don't think they've announced the date yet, but boy, there is a lot of stuff going on right now. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in recruiting. Oh yeah, maybe they may not be done in the transfer portal. Oh boy, would this be a great time to be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com, where you get access to our team coverage, recruiting coverage, X's and O's coverage, plus the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. Fantastic, very active, very enthusiastic community right now. That is all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also, just guys, listen, I'm just going to tell you this once. I know it's January 22nd. Valentine's Day is not that far away. So guess what happens with fantastic restaurants around Columbus? They fill up. The reservations fill up on Valentine's Day, and then you look like a dope. Can we do something off the dollar menu? No, that is not what you want to do. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. You want to go to Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, and one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Make your Valentine's Day reservations right now. Just right now, jeffruby.com/Columbus. You'll thank me later. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.